Hello, good evening or good morning, depending on where you are in the world. My name is Allan, and welcome to this Career Talks. We've got a few people coming in and slowly filling up the page here. So as you come in, just make sure you're on mic, on mute, and you may want to put your video on or off depending on your preference. We are very fortunate to have two guest speakers today in this Career Talks, very relevant speakers for everyone that will be attending today, because they both have a lot of experience in the waste sector, and the attendees are all from the International Solid Waste Association Young Professionals Group. So I'd like to welcome Gary and Samir, if you just want to do a quick hello.
Hello, everyone. Hi.
Before I start asking questions, a few housekeeping notes. So we're going to be recording the session today. So if you know people that are keen to listen to it later, which I do know a few, we're going to be able to pass that on to others. We will mute you throughout. If you do have questions, we do have some time allocated at the end, but feel free to write as we go through in the chat. You can either write directly to Salua if you're having some problems, but if not, feel free to write to everyone and write a question. And if it's appropriate, we'll bring it up throughout. And if not, we'll put it at the end. And we'll also open up to the floor at the end as well if you want to say something. And we're hoping to wrap this all up in under an hour, so to let you get back to your days. So without further ado, I'd like to start asking questions of our guests. Thank you very much again, Samir and Gary, for your time. So just a quick intro. I know they're going to talk about their careers as well, but Samir's worked at Suez for over 12 years and has sound knowledge and experience in waste and recycling and project management. So Suez is a global waste company, and Samir works out of France. Gary is the Vice President of International Affairs in the Strategy and Innovation Department for Veolia. Gary's got over 30 years of experience in the waste and resource industry, and also sits on the ISWA board. Veolia is also an international waste company. Here, and I'm based in Australia, South Australia. We've got Suez and Veolia both here, all the way across the globe to France, where the headquarters are as well, I believe. So, welcome, Samir and Gary. And to get things kicked off, I might actually start with you, Gary. Just a broad question to start. Can you tell us about what it's like to work in one of these large corporate waste firms, and what does a normal day look like for you?
Well, thank you. And for me, I really feel in talking about this, it's really an ideal situation. I should point out first, just to say that I've worked in large companies all my career, so I'm a bit biased, of course, but I've been able to work for a company whose tagline is resourcing the world. And we have shown our purpose. It demonstrates our commitment to creating a positive impact on the planet. And it's really this type of work that I was looking for back when I started some years ago. And really what's interesting too is it does take a large company to provide worldwide water, waste, and energy management solutions that contribute to sustainable development of communities and also industries. And with Veolia, we have 171,000 employees worldwide. And so, yes, we are big, but we need to be big to cover all over those areas, is what I wanted to point out. And what I can say is also just where I'm at right now, working at Veolia's headquarters is quite enjoyable. Over 4 years ago, we had a new headquarters built in Aubervilliers, which is just outside the periphery, and it houses up to 2,000 people. We're equipped with the latest digital solutions, so we have the tools required to make our work more efficient. And this is really essential, especially considering the coronavirus.
You just muted there, Gary. Are you back?
Yeah, I'm back. Who
Yeah.
was the surprise muter?
Oh, nice.
But, but I'll just finish that up and say it's really satisfying. It's a satisfying work environment that we now have. And in terms of your second question was whether there's what is normal, a normal day. And I have to say, as you had mentioned, if such exists, it's really, my days vary quite a bit. And especially when I was traveling before the lockdown. And so that changed my schedule quite a bit. Like many people, I spent 3 months in confinement. I am now almost full-time here in the office and working on Google Hangouts, and there's no traveling taking place. And so this has been a significant change for me, like many people. And so what we see is that something else that, on a normal day, one thing we can be sure of is, like many big cities, a normal day can include traffic on the way home from work. So I still see that on a regular basis.
Great, thanks for that, Gary. And I'm actually going to throw the same question to you, Samir, because I think it's quite a relevant one. So just to repeat, just what's it like to work in a large corporation such as Suez, a large waste corporation, and also what's a normal day for you?
So, it's very like Gary said, there's a lot of common things. We're also based in Paris, or just around Paris. We are in La Défense, which is the business district of Paris. And normal day, I would say it would really depend on your job. But for me, I have a scope that is, yes, a bit larger than the usual scope. I mean, I'm not a project manager anymore. I'm not a lawyer. So I do a bit of everything, trying to develop opportunities. So my normal day is really about connecting with prospects, okay? And through our local teams, okay? So from Paris, connecting with the local Suez units in various countries, and help them in many ways to qualify opportunities and turn them into viable projects. Waste management is a complicated business, and there are many opportunities everywhere, but very few are eligible to be turned into a viable project. So when I mean viable, I mean technically viable, financially viable, socially and ethically viable also. So my job is really about connecting all dots together. So I do a lot of training. I give training to prospects and also to our internal sales force, so our business developers on the field. I keep them updated with technologies, innovations, and yes, I used to travel too, but that's quite a long time now. So now it's a bit different. And so yes, we are more digital, for sure. We are more digital. I can imagine we will travel less than we used to. Also, we pay attention to CO2 emission. Now it's very clear also from travel. And yes, we'll do more Zoom and Teams meeting and so on and so forth. And last point, and we also learned about ourselves during this confinement that we were able to work more remotely. So using home office, sorry. So that's also something at Suez we're developing to have more flexibility in being in offices and be able to work from home, have a better balance between personal life and professional life. So that's going to change, and the usual day, yes, is going to change. But it's like, every big companies, you do a lot of things, and my job is really about, let's say, breaking silos. The issues sometimes with big companies is there are a lot of silos, functional silos. And if you want to define and implement viable and successful projects, you have to break the silos and make sure all functions work together with the same goal. So that's how it is. Now the message I would also pass to you, young professionals, is let's say there is room for every occupations. I mean, we work with lawyers, engineers, of course, but also lawyers, buyers, economists, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of works that, and a lot of occupation that we need to have in a big waste firm like Suez or Veolia.
Great, yeah, thanks for that. You're touching on some interesting points with some of these large organisations. It's not just one particular specialty. You're doing a whole range of things, and that can create silos, as you say. But it also means there's a whole spectrum of different backgrounds and experience and things like that, and within the one organisation. Building on that, I'd be interested in where you were before Suez and what you were doing in your previous roles, and then when you made the transition across, what that was like into Suez, and then what's it been like since, or has it always been Suez? I'm not sure. If you could take us through that, Samir.
Yeah. So I'm with Suez. I've been with Suez for almost 13 years. That would be 13 in October. And before Suez, I had 5-year experience in other big corporations, big French corporations. So also I spent my whole career in big firms. I don't really know how life is in smaller firms, smaller companies. And so I started, and my background, I would say I'm an economist. I studied business, general management. And I started as a project buyer, in the procurement function in 2 French corporations. The first one was, at the time, was France Télécom, at the time when they turned into Orange. Okay, so from the very beginning in my career, I worked in a project mode. Okay, not in a regular operation mode, but rather in a project mode. That's what motivated me. And so I did 5 years in procurement in 2 big French corporations. And then I was hired in Suez in 2007 to work in headquarters as I was in charge of procurement systems and processes, because, Suez is an addition of various entities and various countries. And my job was to make sure we bought equipment at the best terms possible, the terms and conditions. So it was still procurement. I chose Suez at the time. I had choice. Let's say I was young and I had many opportunities. I could have gone to the automobile industry, which, when you like to do procurement and sourcing, is like the gold, path. But I wasn't sure I wanted to follow on procurement. And at the time, I didn't know a lot about environmental services and engineering, and it was very appealing to me. So I joined Suez in 2007, and my idea from the very beginning was I would quit procurement and do something else. And that's really an opportunity that Suez offered, and from the very beginning. So I did my duty on procurement. I think I spent 4.5 years on this procurement mission, and then I had the opportunity to change my career and take another path, and I went to proposal management for waste. For waste, because I could have chosen waste or water. I think I chose waste because it seemed, at the time, it seemed to be more, let's say, entrepreneur style than water business, like more flexible, more merchant, like you have more liberties. But also, as you know, the market is less structured and it's not as viable as the water treatment market. Very different. So I chose waste, and Suez supported me in changing my career path, and I went back to school. It was in 11, so almost 10 years ago, to be a specialist in project management. And then I took over proposals in developing countries. So I managed proposals, especially in Northern Africa, Middle East, Western Africa, a bit Latin America, especially for dump remediation, dump site remediations. and then I had the opportunity to take another role and be in charge of what I'm doing now, of, let's say, strategic development and bringing support and really tailor-made support to our local entities of Suez to keep them updated about our innovations and help them understand the local context of projects and implement our solutions and especially again in developing countries, because this is where people need a lot of support to develop projects. So that's my story.
Yeah, interesting. And you highlight a point that I've found talking to a lot of people that work in the waste sector, that it wasn't necessarily a plan from school to go, yep, I'm going to go work in the waste sector, but then you kind of find yourself in there and you think, actually, there's quite a lot of different things to do here, a lot of opportunities. And that's what I found, and speaking to others as well. So thanks for taking us through that, Samir. And Gary, on that as well, have you had a similar kind of path in? You said you've only worked at big corporations as well. What's your path been like to get where you are at the moment? If you could quickly summarize that. I know it's
going to be tough, you know, it comes with the turf, but I'll just highlight some things. But it all started back when I first completed my graduate work, and I could say I went directly right into a waste company. Actually, it was first job was within the waste, and I was recruited right after my coursework, and then really got progressively over time in this first period, was given some, full responsibilities for engineering and environment for these new companies. And then what ended up happening was that I worked and had brought on some new people, and also managed a solid waste project that was a very large project, an integrated waste project in Pennsylvania. And I was able to, with my team, we got permits in 15 months, which is quite impressive. And that it eventually turned to where we were having in excess of 100 million per year, based on this project. And I also in that period had a number of Superfund sites. I won't get into the definitions on those, but had 4 Superfund sites that I was managing and being involved with the legal aspects as well. So then I moved on. So that was my first job. And then later I was became manager of the environmental engineering, and that was out of Philadelphia, a broader region, and I had a staff team. I won't get into the details here, except during this period, I was asked to go on a special assignment, an international operation, and it was first in Stockholm, and then I was asked to go to Spain to remediate and upgrade a recycling facility in central Spain, and was able to complete that. And what it did is it really gave me the taste for Europe. I really wanted to go back, and fortunately that ended up happening. I was asked by the CEO to be country environmental manager, but it was broader than that, as we had a small team. I won't get into a lot of details here, but there were just 2 Americans that had come over to set up the headquarters and put in place some of the operational standards, environmental management programs, and so forth, and doing that also for Spain. So it was really very interesting. A lot of things took place, but the one that really touched me the most was that that recruiting and training some of the engineers that we brought in, and just the really building them up to really high expertise, and they're all doing well and have done well since that period. But it was fun and quite interesting. If we look now at just going further with waste management still, I was then asked after this assignment in France and Spain to go to London. And I was asked to be the director of environment, health, and safety in the international operations, which was 15 countries. And so we worked on 15 countries. I had 20 people staff. I won't get into the details on this one, but we had a number of tools developed, a number of acquisitions, so we had to do some due diligence as well. We had some tools that were used for reporting. And so from that was my last phase with waste management. And then I took a position in Veolia, which at the time was called Onyx. And Onyx, I was hired to create, again, a new corporate environmental quality department to develop and communicate and ensure implementation of these environmental policies and standards that we were setting throughout Veolia, which again was called Onyx. And I won't get into a lot of detail on these. There were a number of standards and procedures that we put together that were quite essential. So what we see now is, and going forward is, for a period I switched over and we had a vice president of greenhouse gas department, because there was a lot going on with climate change and also in terms of our clients wanting to have carbon footprinting. So we developed some tools there. We also were able to get 11 projects into the UN system and clean development mechanism projects, and that was successful as well, although the market dropped somewhat several years later, but it was a good experience for us. And then we then shifted it over. I was vice president of sustainable development. I won't get into a lot of the details there. But more recently, as you heard, I'm vice president of international affairs for the strategy and innovation department. And really what that does is it's establishing active partnerships with key global stakeholders and institutions to really support the company's existing and developing businesses, and to coordinate partnerships on subjects, transversal subjects, which are mainly circular economy and climate change. So we're doing this, and that's what I've been doing. I've had a number of different projects, initiatives, and coalitions and that I'm working with in different subjects, as I mentioned, and that's been quite helpful for us, notably things like the New Plastics Economy Initiative, took part in the Alliance to End Plastic Waste. And more recently, as we're with the just one of the projects I've had has been a COVID crisis and post-crisis observatory that was done internally for really getting information and getting it focused for our senior management to understand what was going on, what are the risks, and also how we will eventually move towards a recovery. So I've done that as well. And so I think I'll leave it there. And if there's any questions, I'll be free to answer those.
Yeah, great. Thanks for that, Gary. It sounds, and we'll get to questions shortly as well. And a reminder, anyone, feel free to put your questions on the side. I have some more questions in the meantime. So just based on hearing both of you speak about your roles, there's lots of moving around. There's lots of new opportunities. The organisation, because it's a global organisation, there's other places to go, and different projects to get involved in. Would you say that's one of the, and we'll go to Samir here, would you say that's one of the advantages of working at a large waste organisation, or just a large organisation in general? And also, what are some the other real benefits? But at the same time, what are maybe some of the drawbacks? Is there too much asked to go around, or do you have to be too fast paced, or what are some of the drawbacks as well? If you could answer that as upfront as you can.
Well, an advantage immediately what I can see is my own personal story is I mean, it's good context if you want to manage your career and like, you know, see different things in the same company as I did. I started in procurement, and then I did project management, and now I'm more in strategy. So I think this is the advantage of big corporations. You have this ability to move from one career to another, and to benefit also from the support of the big corporations, things that maybe you don't have in smaller corporations. But On the other hand, on smaller corporations, sorry, I think from the very beginning, you can do, I think, a bit of everything, which you cannot really do in big corporations, because, as I said, you have your function and your functional stream that you have to stay in, and then you sometimes you work transversally with other departments. In smaller companies, if you like that, I mean, because you have to like that, you have to be on the morning, you have to be a maintenance manager, and in the afternoon a finance manager, for example. And we have this sometimes in Suez, we have, very small entities in the regions, and the same guy or the same girl, yeah, it can be finance manager, operation manager, human resource manager. When you are a plant manager, you have a bit of everything. And I think this is how it is in smaller companies, especially in waste management. So it will really depend on your mindset. If you want to feel, let's say, safe and stay in your zone, in your comfort zone, then you have your function in big corporation. Or if you are a bit more adventurous, I think smaller companies can be a good fit for you. It's really, I think that's my vision.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great, thanks for that. I see you nodding, Gary. Did you have anything to add there?
Yeah, when you talk about what are the advantages, I think being a large company, the advantages are that we have the resources and expertise to tackle numerous types of projects and services, and we have, of course, our core activities that are taking place, but we've also been working on some of the most complex operations. We have specialist expertise, and these include hazardous waste or industrial process water, contaminated soils, and we're developing these activities and to also to use key resources and also combat climate change. We provide energy efficiency for industries and buildings. We're also recycling plastic, reusing wastewater and seawater desalination. All of that is going on within our operations, and it's at a large scale. So with that, and we also have innovations, solutions for tomorrow, and we're looking at things like health and new pollutants, new material loops, the food chain, new digital services. So this is all going on. We have a innovation department to work on our R&D. So that is a real advantage because you have the infrastructures and what's needed to really work on these types of projects, which are large projects, they're global, and to do that it will take some global and large corporations to take part. And so that for sure is what we're working to do, and continuing to try to reach out and get some of these more complex issues that are out there. And you wanted a drawback, right?
Yeah, if you wanted to touch on that, Gary?
Well, I would say that, I mean, and you heard, I think Samir really defined it quite well, but sometimes in large companies, it may feel too big, it just feels large, it's heavy. Maybe authorizations take a little bit longer, perhaps more bureaucracy at times. So at times it can be difficult to keep up with everything going on in the company as well in terms of communication and knowing what's going on. But for me, when it does start feeling a bit heavy, one of the things I like to do is go visit one of our facilities to really remind myself of the real actions taking place as part of our work and on the ground, the essential services. We're a big company, and we have, as you heard from Samir, we have a lot of the companies are very small units installations. So we say it's, we're a large corporate waste firm, but the installations, the offices are much smaller, and when you go there, it's really satisfying. I mean, I find that it's really refreshing to visit these facilities. You get to speak with the managers and operators who are really proud of their installations. It's their baby, they're working on that, and they want to show it to you, and it just kind of gives you you have good exchange, and it gives you a good feeling that, hey, you're proud because you know that we have operations like this out in the field. And I think it takes it away from that, headquarters, which, is quite a bit different than that. So, and you realize that these sites are really operational. So it's good to see, good to check it out. And I remember as there was a CEO that I had worked with that had gave several of us a plaque that was stating, a desk is a dangerous place from which to view the world. And I think that is really clear in this situation, where you need to get out and not stay in the desk and make yourself available to get out and see it, really see things. And that's what I was kind of referring to as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and these types of organisations provide that opportunity, by the sounds, which is great. You're not necessarily stuck at a desk all the time. You've got other places you can go and visit and see and hear from people.
Maybe not right now, but in time to come, I'm told it will come back.
Yes. Great. Thanks very much for that, Gary and Samir. We've got some questions coming in. I might throw it over to you, Samir. There's been a question. What's your experience been and suggestions? Well, actually, I'll talk to you about this because you talked about working in some other countries before. So either of you can answer this, but I'll ask Samir. What's your experience and suggestions on working in countries where procurement are highly influenced politically and have issues like corruption? Have you had any experience with that, with the procurement side of things?
Well, we're talking here about big projects, like PPP, public-private partnerships. The framework is very, should be defined from the very beginning, and it's very easy to let's say to spot when the framework is not clear or is a bit, I don't know, I cannot find the word, but it's a bit, let's say, not ethical for us. So that's one of the filter we use in our opportunity screening, of course. In any case, we cannot be everywhere, so we have to be selective in our approach of business development. And then I say, in waste, and we have to be frank, in waste, procurement is always highly political, because it's about, the mayor who wants to be re-elected, so he needs a nice plant and so on and so forth. It's our business. So in any case, it's political. Then what we have to be transparent and really clear on the performance we want to bring when we build a waste treatment plant. Is for the plant to be performant on the long term. It's not just to build a plant and then go away. And so in our approach, operations is key. You just we don't build a plant like in 2 years and 3 years and then let the municipal team, deal with it, and they don't know how to handle it and so on. So that's where also that's what my job is about, is really to understand the local context. When we look at the procurement package from the client, we have to realize if they did their own homework. Do they know their local waste systems? Do they have a proper collection systems? And how do they manage the informal sector? Do they include the informal sector in the project? That's something that is needed, especially in developing countries. And so we screen all of that, and then we decide if we go or if we don't go. So if we spot something that is, like I say, which is not acceptable ethically, we just don't go to the project. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. And you've got to make those kind of decisions, and you're going to come across that every now and then if you're a global company, I assume. So identify it early, I assume, as early as you can, and try to avoid it by the sounds. Gary, I've got a question for you, but did you have anything to add on that one? before?
No, that was perfect. No.
Yeah. Gary, there was a question here. How do you, from Kartik, thank you. How do you see the future market of CDM or climate-centric approaches for waste management in the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, that's a good question. I'll pull out my crystal ball here, my CDM crystal ball, and try to figure that out. But we've been, what I would say is that we're counting on that as a mechanism, a tool to allow for these projects to happen. It took a lot of time. We had, for example, 11 projects that were registered. Some of the projects are still active, but the amounts that are being paid for the credits, the emission credits, has really dropped down quite a bit. So there needs to be some work done to bring that back up. I would hope that it's before 10 years or 15 years. I would hope that it's in the several years to come, because there's work still going on in some of the COP 21 reviews and documents. Not all the technical issues were addressed. They have a new name for the emission reduction credits, and it's I'll have to remember that one. But they are looking at those types of mechanisms again. There's work being done, and it was hoped that would be done in the previous COP. Unfortunately, it was canceled. But I think that type of a structure and having those mechanisms will come into play for sure. Whether it will be the same types of procedures as we've seen with the CDM, I can't really say. But we should have those types of mechanisms to benefit for these mitigation projects.
Yeah.
There's one more thing about emissions. Also, you can have a look to voluntary emission marketplaces. Like there's one, it's called the gold standard. That's one we used for our project in Serbia, in Belgrade, because on those, let's say, secondary markets, the conditions to get the certificates are tougher. You know, they are more requiring, there are more requirements, and so you can expect a higher price for the tons of CO2. And so there's not, just to say, there's not only the CDM, which is from the United Nations, but also more local initiatives and from, let's say, private market operators. And this is developing, and there's a lot of, let's say, money available for that. So if we have to be able to package, to define our projects and to package them in a way to make them eligible to those new marketplaces where we can expect more money for the certificates. And of course, this money will make the overall projects more affordable for authorities, because usually, and there's let's say, we share the revenue of this with local authorities, and that's also a good, let's say, we talked about politics before. That's good for local politics to be able to show a waste treatment plant that is, you know, certified by such carbon company, and to get money from that. So there's also these marketplaces.
Yeah, thank you. I missed mentioning that, but some of the projects we did have that were CDM are actually on the voluntary market now, and using that quite a bit, because the projects are there, and they can mainly use that. The funds, or the emission credits are lower than the voluntary in most cases. The voluntary have been lower, but they're enough to at least help construct maybe the biogas systems or other work that's taking place on these sites. But the voluntary market is still alive and working, and there's quite a bit of use on that.
Yep. Thank you, guys. Yeah, and it's good to hear that these types of mechanisms have made changes and made you guys and others get Suez and Veolia involved in some important projects. It is one good thing about the waste sector is you can influence climate change and things like that as well, which is great. And the crystal ball, Gary, we all want that crystal ball. I don't know if it sounds like it's a useful tool, that one. If anyone finds one, let me know. Another one, thank you, Gary and Samir, really interesting talk so far. A question on COVID. Gary, you touched on it before. So if you could both just kind of cover how it's affected Veolia and Suez more broadly, other than, I suppose, personally, but more broadly, Veolia and Suez, and how have you guys been kind of changing and adjusting to in response?
Well, what we have is, with our activities, we have what are called the essential services. And so our Veolia didn't stop. There were actions being taken and doing the essential services, cleaning, waste management, and other works that are essential remained on, and even there was even additional support provided for those activities. So that was key for us, and it was key. That was what we were focusing on in terms of, making sure the essential services were being performed, but also being done in a safe way. That we were, the health and safety was really checked out, and just making sure that those workers were safe in their work. For us, otherwise, what we saw was that mainly the municipal waste, for example, continued. So there was a base there in terms of keeping operations going. Some of the commercial or the industrial clients were shut down, so that has had an impact. But I think what we're seeing is, it's going to take a little bit of time, but I think our sector is held up because there's, in some cases it's because the diversity within the companies and being able to maintain the work and maintain the services, the essential services, which was quite challenging, but it's been done quite well. And so now it's just looking at how do we move out of that and look towards the COVID, working with the COVID still in place, but trying to keep things going and improve the economy.
Yes, so I share what Gary just said, and it was really great. I'm sure you all saw those videos on the internet, people, giving some applause to our staff on collection trucks in the street. So it was good recognition of, the essential service that our staff do every day. So that was great. And now what about the after crisis? We hope that, at the moment there are these European discussions for, a recovery plan, and a lot of the money is supposed to go to sustainable infrastructure. And we start to have, information in the press, and also about the financial institution, the big institution like the World Bank, that there will be money available for big projects. As always, there would be more money for water than for waste, but we hope there would be a good part of the money for waste infrastructure, because now everybody is aware that we need to improve the sanitation conditions in many countries, and that's this awareness, this new awareness, maybe is due to the COVID crisis. So that can be a positive impact for waste business.
Yeah, and there was a question about the potentially positive outcomes from COVID as well. So thanks for touching on that as well. Gary?
Yeah, no, just, I mean, what's been interesting is, and we've touched on it in different times already today, but I think there is a lot to be learned about from the lockdowns and the way in which we worked and the way we kept things going as well in offices, and just getting better with webinars, getting better with communication exchanges, and doing that in a way that keeps things going. And I think in a lot of ways it's become much more efficient because we're using it more, and we're finding out that we can get things done. And I think you see that in a lot of cases you can get things done in less than an hour and move on. And I think that some of those efficiencies will carry over as well. Yep.
Yeah, and it's I'm glad that organizations are realizing that there's these opportunities, and why not continue those positives after COVID. So yeah. I think, Salua, did you want to raise your question now, or did you want me to ask it? You're going to raise
sure.
it?
Yeah, I'll ask it now. First of all, since we're coming to an end, I'll just like to thank you for everything you've been saying. As a YPG myself, your insights have been so valuable, and the fact that it's recorded, I'm sure, and I hope everyone will be able to benefit as well as I did. But yeah, my question was actually, as a YPG right now, I'm looking into going through like career, new options and so on, and I will be graduating soon. And so I was thinking, does it make more sense to already, or basically the question is, how do you infiltrate such big companies, such big waste companies? Do you try to apply and just see, maybe even if it's out of the scope of your job description, do you just try to get into the company and maybe change from there? Or is it more of a you get rejected and that was your chance? And maybe I'll direct this question first to Gary, because there's another question to Samir about more specifically what skills do you need for procurement, for example, jobs, the must skills, the must know-hows, and maybe you can both touch a bit on how to get really into the company like yours.
Well, let me answer that, and I'm not a human resource person, but I'll do my best. What I would say is, if there's, we post positions on a regular basis. It's right now is a slow period, certainly. And there's actually no requests on the board right now. But in saying that, that will change and that will turn around. I would say, in terms of the procedure, I would say try to look at the positions that really align with what you want to do, because once those come in, they'll be reviewed and they'll be making decisions. It's not so much, well, depending on the differences that there are, but it's going to be that they will, they'll be looking at, there may be 20 or more CVs that are sent in. So I think it's more trying to be as close as you can to the descriptions, and just seeing if you can adapt your CV to link into some of that. I think that's important if you can. But otherwise it would have to be through other means than just coming through HR. It would have to be if someone is, if you know someone, or some of that still happens. But I would say try to make it match up as much as you can to the description, to have a possibility to enter into the first round or discussions.
Thank you, makes sense.
Sure.
And for Samir, so the question specifically is, looking back, how you suggest to build the individual capacity for waste management project bidding and acquisition? Like, what are the must skills and knowledge an individual must develop for it?
So I would, it's difficult to answer, because when I arrived in this new path like 10 years ago in waste project management, and in the project department team, I was the only one who was not an engineer by training. Okay, I was not an engineer, and it was a specific moment. We used to manage projects in, you know, mostly projects about waste to energy plants. Okay, so the engineering side was very important because you had to design the plants and then follow the construction and so on. And I think I was a bit lucky, I have to say, because at that moment, like 10 years ago, we started to have a growing business pipe in emerging countries where there was not, let's say, enough financial resource to build big plants, and they were looking at smaller solutions and, let's say, let's say lower technology solutions, and we clearly talk about like landfilling, you know, with biogas system and leachate management systems and so on, which is okay if it's done properly and it's anyway in line with the financial resources of such countries. So I was a bit lucky because given my, let's say, not so technical background, it was perfect for me, because on the other hand, it was really more complex contractually speaking, in terms of contractual arrangements. You know, projects happened in places where there was no PPP framework, you know, regulations were not clear, and you had to set contractual arrangements with local civil work companies. So you need finally more soft skills than really hard skills. You need to be able to understand the local system, okay, how collection was organized, and what were the real expectations of the client. There's always, you know, there's always a gap between what's written in specification and what the client really wants. And all the things that they would like to have, but they cannot write because they think it's too expensive, and so on and so forth. So I think the skills, in my personal situation, the skills were really to be able to have this, we say, 360 degrees views. So have a look at everything, all the aspects, not ignoring technology, because technology is key, but projects are not driven and must not be driven by technology. Technologies are an answer to solve a technical problem, but a project, especially waste project, is so much than that. You know, you know all, and especially when you know that if you don't have waste flows, then your project will not fly. So you need to understand where the waste is coming from, who is managing it, and where it will go when you build the new, for example, the new sanitary landfill site, and will the cost be acceptable to all the stakeholders, and so on and so forth. So you really have to have this intellectual openness, be open-minded to really understand all of that, and then as a project manager, be able to coordinate the works of all specialists. Because here again, you work with specialists, so engineers, lawyers, people in charge of financial modelization, you know, they do the business plan of the project, buyers, because you have to quote a lot of equipment and so on. So I would say the skills is really to you know, you have to be motivated about understanding all of that, and also you have to work closely with business developers. You have to be on the field. As Gary said, you cannot understand, you know, the role from your desk, so you have to go. I spend, you know, many days on dump sites to understand how that works, you know, to see how they tip the waste on the site, and see the informal waste pickers and so on. And so yes, you have to be able, and finally, it's like working in a small company, because when you're a project manager in waste, and especially in emerging countries, you have to do a bit of everything. So in terms of competencies, okay, with years, I learned about a lot about engineering. I'm not an engineer, but I can say I understand a lot about waste treatment technologies because I spent many time on that. But you have, first of all, to have, I think, contractual background, also experience in negotiating with suppliers. You know, a bit of my procurement experience was key because we outsource a lot, you know, when we build those projects. And I think communication and active listening, because active listening means you have also to understand what the clients don't say or don't want to say to really define your value offer. So I think I like and I love waste projects because it's so, the scope is so large. So I think you have to have this motivation and then you will learn.
Yeah, I think especially in this field, it's just about this holistic approach to find these solutions. So you've both really touched upon this. I'll give it right back to you, Matt. Just before that, any general advice you'd like to add to Gary's, maybe to people entering the workforce newly? Samir? Or yeah, Gary as well, like any general advice you'd like to say?
Well, you know what, it's pretty basic. What I would think about is that, you know, it's a challenge just sending in CVs, but what I would totally suggest is, and then you'll probably say, well, of course, but you really need to do your homework for one, and find out what they do, find out what positions they're really looking for, and finding out maybe some more about the company culture. Mm-hmm. And look it up and check out social media, but do upfront work to really get a good understanding and adapt whatever you know, whether it's for a position that's already shown or a CV, to kind of match what they're doing. And I think that's important. And maybe you know, finding out more and having, you know, asking to have some discussions with some people that are in the companies to get a better understanding. But it's not easy, especially right now, but hopefully that will change and there will be opportunities, and we're counting on Samir's the European Green Deal and all the other stimulus packages to have little pockets of waste management solutions in there. That would be fine. So but good luck with that.
Thank you. Samir? Anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I'm not aware of your background, of your training.
No, in general, for everyone as well. Like,
but yeah, I think from my experience, from what I've seen so far, and as Gary said, at the moment it's difficult, you know, because of the economic situation. So, but I think you can try also on we talk about smaller companies, you know, they are more agile, more flexible, and I think most of all, as we do, they need passionate people. So if you can show that you're really passionate about this sector, I think that's that's an asset. And then you will learn. I mean, you will learn by working, and that's what happened to me also. So
great, thank you so much. I think a lot of us here, the members of ISWA and YPG, are so passionate. So I think we're good to go. I'll give it back to you, Matt, and mute myself. Thank you.
Great, thank you. We're going to wrap up there. There were a few more questions, but we don't have time to get to them. Sorry. I'll jot them down anyway. A couple of things to note there. The don't spend time looking at the world from your desk, I think was the saying. I think that's a great one. There seems to be lots of roles and places you can go within these large corporate organizations, lots of different projects to get involved in. Yes, there can be silos, but you can go and see and touch other projects that are going on within your own company. Match the application to the job role. If you're going for a job in one of these places, do your homework. Don't just chuck the resume in and hope for the best. Do your homework before, try to build some relationships, etc., and learn a bit more about the role. And don't underestimate soft skills, and people drive projects, not the technology. So Thanks very much for that, Gary and Samir. That's been really insightful. The young professionals would be very appreciative of your time and insights today. And we'll record this and pass this recording on, because I think a lot of others will benefit from it too. So just a formal thank you, and I'll say good day to everyone, and we'll be in touch soon with the next one. But thanks again, Gary and Samir.
Okay, well, thank you. It's well done, and thanks for inviting us.
Thank you. And yeah, we'll be there. If you have more questions, I'll be there. So yeah, I see there's already some contacts taken through LinkedIn, so do not hesitate.
Excellent. All right, thanks again, guys. We'll close it there. Thanks for your time, and
bye-bye.
see you.
Okay, bye-bye, everyone.